I'm Bruce Apar, and this is Frank J. Rich, and you're watching Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog. Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog is brought to you by Chase Media Group, publisher of The Penny Saver and provider of multimedia marketing solutions for an omni-channel marketplace. And speaking of omni-channel, in addition to seeing the show on this channel, you could also be watching it on YouTube, which means that what I just said doesn't make a lot of sense. Because maybe you are watching it on YouTube right now. But if you're not, you can go to YouTube and see all of our past shows just by searching for TownLink TV. And we thank our CEO, Carla Chase, and our Chief Strategy Officer, Frank J. Rich, my co-host, for putting us up here. And we like to bring you guests from the community, some of the people maybe you already know, but many of them maybe you don't know, who are making significant contributions in a very productive way. And as we see it contributing to our quality of life, and Chase Media Group feels that there can't be enough exposure of people like this, because we certainly hear enough about other things that go on, maybe that aren't always so good. And today we're welcoming Tony Fusco, or Anthony S. Fusco. Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Frank.
And I've known Tony for a while now. He's a man of many talents. He's a network engineer, right?
Consultant, yep.
Network consultant for computer systems. But today on the show, we want to talk with him about his considerable experience in the political arena, running campaigns for candidates. And he just completed a successful campaign for the town of Yorktown Supervisor Michael J, who was reelected. And from the point of view of the voter, all of you watching, you see campaigns from a certain perspective, and maybe some of the things you think that go on are okay, and other things are not okay, and would have your own opinion. And so we thought it would be a good opportunity to give you some insight into how a campaign comes together and why things are done in a campaign that you may or may not agree with. And please, we'd like to hear from you too. If you want to give us any feedback, you could always email me at info at chasemediagroup.com. So Tony, why don't we first just talk about how you got into this business of election campaigns? I know you were a legislator yourself.
I was a legislator back in 2008 through 2010 up in Putnam County, but I go back even further than that. As a young upstart, I worked with a couple of campaigns in my hometown of Eastchester, and really grew to enjoy the participation in the process. From that, I began going to town meetings and to school board meetings, and as my family began to grow and become important to me, the things that were going on around us for their lifestyle, I started becoming more and more active in the public arena. And so I felt like somehow my participation could make some small change, and it's been very gratifying, because you do see the changes that you've made. And so with being involved in some of the campaigns that I started out with, I thought, I could make a difference, and ran for office myself. And with that, began writing software and developing systems for campaigns, if you will, and that has morphed into my involvement in other people's campaigns.
Right, and you, just to be specific, you served a term as a legislator
Putnam
in Putnam
County legislator, yes.
Right. So I would imagine the singular challenge for somebody who does what you do, even whether it's as a vocation or avocation, is getting people out to vote. Right, and is motivating people to go out to vote. Is there any kind of benchmark statistic? What percentage of registered voters on a regular basis do vote in elections?
It varies in the election. In the general election, you get close to 50%. There are local elections and there are regional elections. This year was more of a regional election in that we had the county executive race, the legislators' races, and you also have some local races as well. And then on some off years, you'll have for instance, next year you'll have your Congress and Senate races.
Right, and that gets more people out, right?
Well, the Congress and Senate more so than the local races, but then not quite as many as the presidential. Yep. Right. And then there are even sub-regional where we just have the local races, and there are lower turnout rates. For instance, in the race that we worked on, myself and the folks in the Grace campaign in Yorktown. There are 8,000 turnout elections. 10,000 was this election, of a voter base of about 24,000. So you're getting close to 50%, but not quite there. And then, as I said, in the presidential elections, you'll see 15,000 voters turn out, which is a pretty decent turnout for the electorate. Many people will scoff at, why don't we get more people out? And, people are busy, and some people choose not to engage in that fashion. They may just be the type of person that will go out to a board meeting and speak up that way. That's their choice in their public duty.
Now, part of your job, I'd say a central part of your job, is to analyze, right, who are the people most likely to vote for your candidate, and then to target them and to then get them out to vote, right? And not that there aren't people like you in other campaigns, but somebody like yourself would seem to have a distinct advantage, being that you're trained in computer software, right, and database management.
And to that point, technologically speaking, things have changed dramatically. I remember back in the old days, we would go up to the Board of Elections and look to see who had gone out to vote, and look at, they call them the buff cards, and we'd see how many votes they've been to, they've participated in, and we'd write their names down in a sheet, and we'd come back, and then we'd look up their phone numbers and make phone calls. Well, now, that's all done electronically. It's all done digitally, where the information is available to any campaign through the Board of Elections. You can take that information, go to a list house, and merge in email addresses if you're willing to pay for that, or phone numbers if you're willing to pay for that. On a national level, they merge in all sorts of data points about the individual, the types of car they drive, religions and nationalities and so forth, and they create models for their potential voter. On a local level, we don't go to that extent. We just look at the frequency of voting, their party affiliations, and then we do what we call voter ID. A voter identification is when you actually do make those phone calls to see how they feel about what's happening in their government today. If you're working for an incumbent, their incumbent candidate, and if you're working for the opposition, what the record is, whether they're happy with the work that's being done, and so forth. And you get an idea of who will vote for your candidate. And if there are people that are sitting on the fence, you'll have a candidate give a call, or you'll target certain advertising or media to them, particular to their concerns. For instance, in our recent campaign, there is a senior group that has particular concerns. In many cases, the concerns for seniors are taxes, but there are pocket seniors like Jefferson Village, a section of Yorktown, where they have certain water runoff issues, and so we'll target a particular mailing with regards to their issues. And so you market to the people that you're looking for their votes.
Right, who are most susceptible to voting for your candidate.
Correct.
And in the interest, certainly, of full disclosure, as well as maybe a point of pride, we should say Chase Media Group printed the mailing pieces for the Grace campaign this year, and in fact, Chase Media Group does a considerable amount of candidate print and deliver, as we call it. And so let's talk about that. I would imagine the reason you don't, let's say, send pieces, and I think our director Richard is going to show some of the pieces that you created that we happen to print and mail. You don't send them to everybody for one reason, because it's cost prohibitive.
It's astronomical.
Yeah.
You know, print is one aspect of or direct mail is one aspect of our outreach. Between direct mail,
And it's still really the primary way, isn't
news,
it? The primary
print.
means?
Say again.
It's still the primary means, I would think. Direct mail,
It
yeah.
is one. It's changing. Email is another.
Yes.
Social media is another. As in the last presidential election.
Sorry, President Obama is the first president, I would say, elected with extensive use of social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just like they say, the analogy is President Kennedy was elected largely because of his telegenic qualities on, with television in 1960.
And so we try to create a mix that draws interest in our candidate, and also we have to look at it from a financial perspective. You'll see the signs around town. The signs are the least expensive means of getting the name recognition out there. Of course, you really can't get a platform out on a sign, but name recognition is very important. Branding is very important, and one of the things that Chase has done so well for us in our pieces is we've utilized the same picture, the same logo, and
Right.
and I think you're familiar with the Like Mike piece.
Well,
And
that's by the way, and I believe that was your idea, right? I think that's a great example of, in a manner of speaking, it's cross-platforming, because you have the very traditional lawn signs, and you used it, and I'd never seen this before, to send people to his social media platform, Facebook page.
Right, right. And at the same time, you're using the same logo on the print media and in our newspaper advertising and so forth. Branding is important.
And basically, it's interesting because we also, again, Chase Media Group does design work. We have a very talented, award-winning art department, which, working with you, I know, designed those pieces, and then you used it also for your newspaper ads.
Right.
So like you say, you kept a consistent look.
Common look and feel, correct. And you try to do that in your other media. While we don't have the same look on Facebook, we certainly kept the Like Mike logo there prominently displayed, and we actually did frequent boosts, as they call them, on Facebook, and sent out requests for people to come in and like Mike.
Yeah.
If I might ask a question.
Sure.
So, Tom, did you use Facebook?
Tony.
I'm sorry.
That's right.
Tony, did you use Facebook in the way of voter profiling or voter tagging?
No, we didn't go into the demographics as deeply as we would have liked to. We basically stuck with the age range that was appropriate for the media, as well as or for effective use of the media, as well as geography. We really didn't go into special interests. No.
Okay. Yeah, because that sort of modeling is what the Obama campaign did do.
Mm-hmm.
They used the information that was freely available on social media platforms to finitely manage the target audience.
You're like lifestyle preferences.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not my forte, and our budget was not such that we could hire someone to do specifically that type of micro targeting, if you will. But
I'm sorry.
no, we're aware that it's available. But like I said, we had to work within the resources of the campaign.
Yeah, it's just interesting because, well, of course we know about this sort of thing, but the third leg of the stool, the analytics stool, is psychographics.
Right.
And the psychographics is to get to the conversations that deliver motivation under circumstances. And when you add that piece, then you've got a real tight target, so to speak. It's social media. It's very inexpensive to use, and people can use it not only in politics, but they can use it in business to narrow their target audience by their actual experiences with products and services. So I'm going to guess that because it was already done, it'll be done increasingly over time, and it is less expensive than print. Although print clearly holds more impression
and influence, right?
And for a longer period of time. And there are endless statistics on that. Despite the fact that a lot of people think that print has no value anymore, it dominates in all of those categories. So what do you think you were able to accomplish by the methodologies that you applied, in particular the software modeling that you did?
Well, first of all, with regards to the software, we're able to use the voter history, which is, as I started saying
And you call them, by the way, I heard you call them, during the campaign, I heard you call, they're prime voters, right?
Yes.
And then you define the parameters
of the
what
prime
a
voter, right? And
so
in any given election, those parameters change. For instance, in a presidential election, the prime voter comes out for that particular election comes out every 4 years. In our election, we're a 2-year. The supervisor's race is a 2-year cycle, and so we would use every 2-year election. But for this particular year, we were also interested in the 4 years prior to this particular year because that election had the same dynamics with regards to our county executive race and the legislative races. So we wanted to see who was going to be coming out for this particular race, but based on their 4-year pattern. And so whether they're Republicans in a Republican candidate's race, the frequency that they turn out. One of the things that I would have to overcome or persuade my candidate and some of his advisors was that the fear is we need to get enough critical mass out there to vote for our candidate. And the fool's errand is trying to get all of the Republicans out or all of a particular party out. They're never going to all come out. And so you're spending tremendous resources trying to recoup a few additional voters. It doesn't work that way. And in retrospect, what I'm going to do for my candidate is show who actually turned out as compared to who we believed were the prime candidates. They'll be able to see, right, prime voters, right? They'll be able to see the actual the merit in the
software or the system,
the methodology we choose. Right.
Well, it's a very intelligent model, and at its foundation is the conclusion that that the people who will vote are the people who will vote, as opposed to those who will not. And so going. I mean, this is a classic business model for email marketing and other things. Is you go to people who have identified themselves as wanting to or having already done something that that relates to a product or a service, and then you mark those, and then when they actually do the thing, like in selling automobiles, then you look back at it and ask yourself if those people actually voted for my candidate and why.
That's interesting because what you're saying is, the voters are customers. The
they
voters
are
your customers, and customers vote for a product, right?
And,
It's the same type of thing.
And a consumer is a consumer.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
It's just what they're in the what they want, need, or are in the habit of buying. And if you miss the last one, then you're going to go to a whole bunch of people who have no habit.
Inefficient.
Right.
But we also should talk about, speaking of consumers and consumerism as it applies to campaigns. We have lawn signs, and we have robocalls, and we have email now. Marketing is becoming very big, and now with lawn signs are regulated by each municipality, right? They have when they're supposed to be picked up afterwards, and where you can put them, and robocalls political robocalls are exempt from the do not call registry.
Right.
And I know you were telling me, Tony, during the campaign how because of things like caller ID, it's become much more challenging to get through on the phone.
It has. For one reason or another, and I kind of understand it. The voter really does not want to is tired of being bombarded by all of this information and all of the phone calls and the mail, and it's often, and I think Frank, you and I talked about this. A voter will pick up a piece and just toss it in the garbage. But for that instant, as you said earlier today, they've gotten an impression.
Right.
That's correct.
And so it may not be the content and the real meat of what the candidate is about, but how you've touched them. And so it's a game of numbers. How many times you touch the voter, the different media that you use, whether it's tactile, visual, audio. We're starting to use now video, which is now has sound and so forth. I've in the past sent out email blasts that have an audio attached to them.
Like a podcast.
And well, you can have sounds. I mean, I used thunder and lightning. Thunder.
Right.
I used back in the day when I was trying to get the school board or the people in the municipality to persuade the school boards to go for full day kindergarten. That was a big push of mine at one point. I'd use a rooster, symbolizing the wake up Mayapack. And it was very effective. And it's funny, one of the board members would say to me, "Tony, we're going to have to hear the rooster again this year," because he knew that it was my cry to the public.
Right, smart. It's
to
political
action.
theater. Yeah, it's political
to action,
theater.
right,
Yeah.
right. So there's so many different ways to reach, and that mix, I think, is how you affect the
Right.
the
It's a
voter.
sensory,
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, clearly, a rabbit can sell a battery and a lizard insurance. So it's not far-fetched. I mean, we are who we are,
Right.
and how we respond to things is actually a matter of science. And if you get close to the science, you can
Yep.
use it to your benefit or to the benefit ultimately of the customer or the voter.
Right.
Because a lot of voters, and this is not something that we have discussed in any detail, but the psychology of the voter is important today, and increasingly so. There's a large body of dispassionate voters. There's a general view of the dysfunctional nature of government and all of those things. And without listing all of them, it is necessary to actually mark who the person is with respect to how they're going to vote or respond to local governmental, societal, community initiatives. And when you can determine those things, you can better prepare the message that you have more succinctly, so that you don't have to open a brochure, so to speak. Messaging is there. It's clear. It's the one that you want to make, and it's made.
It's targeted.
It's made no matter
absolutely.
what the customer does with the vehicle. So if they toss it, the impression's made.
And the culmination of all that we do with regards to the various outreaches and the voter ID and the prime voter selection is on Election Day.
Yeah.
As I say, let sleeping dogs lie. If your opponents, if you've identified properly who your candidate's supporters are, you let the opponent's candidate or supporters stay. We don't call them out, and we hope that their outreach program or their get out the vote drive, as we call it, GOTV, is weak. And if we have a strong GOTV and we've identified who our voters are and we pull them out to vote, well, then the numbers come in our favor. It really is. It's quite simple as that, but with all of the nuances of the background.
Right.
And it's really, we're not talking about the human side of it. There's a lot of fun in what we do. And Bruce, I think to some degree you can appreciate the fun that we had with, we had an opponent that, just without speaking about the individual, gave us a lot to laugh at and to chew on. And I likened our banter back and forth with David Letterman and what he used to do to poor George Bush. In the way he spoke, and we would have fun with that. And we actually even created a piece that spoke to the things that this person said that were his own words, yet it just when the public read it, they had to scratch their heads and say, who is this really the person that I'm going to vote for? So we had a little bit of fun with it as well, And
that raises another question about how do you manage things like media coverage and press conferences and letters to the editor, because that all plays into influencing the vote too, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There are supporters out there that are willing to write letters to the editor, and of course we do outreach, press releases, and we feed the press information that
Right.
that encourages them or persuades them to come and attend our conferences. And then we'll use those conferences, whether it's on our social media, on YouTube, with a website, what have you, again, to just further enhance and reinforce the message that we're trying to send out for our candidate.
Right.
And I have to say, it doesn't hurt to have a candidate that really is super qualified, and you don't always get that, and a super qualified candidate can lose very easily with complacency.
Right.
With too much confidence and ego.
Right.
I was involved in a race back in my hometown where the fellow was a shoo-in, brilliant attorney, very well liked by the people who knew him, but the people who didn't know him thought he was arrogant. And he was complacent. He didn't do the door-to-door that his opponent did. His opponent was an unknown, and beat on every door and won the election. So having a good candidate is nice for a guy like me who, you have something great to work with and to bring out to the public, but
it doesn't eliminate the need for you. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's a two-part thing. Yeah.
Right.
And speaking of that, I know there are varying points of view about how important or the degree of importance of party affiliation in local town level elections. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
The one thing that I can point to specifically is that I tell voters who are what we call unaffiliated, nons, they're referred to as blanks, they don't have a particular party designation, that they disenfranchise themselves in many cases in the actual election, because in many cases the general election is determined by the primary.
The
primary election.
Oh, primary election, right. If there is a primary.
Yeah, well, when there is a primary election, if you don't have a party affiliation, now happen to be with a particular party, you're not able to help in the selection process.
Right.
So there may be two candidates in the primary process where the lesser candidate gets in because the voters didn't turn out or they were not affiliated with that particular party.
Right. And by the way, I'm one of those people. I'm a non. I'm not registered with any party, primarily because I just like to vote for the person, not necessarily for the party. Yeah.
The beauty is, even as a registered Republican or as a registered Democrat or whatever party you choose, you can still vote for whoever you choose.
Right.
There is I guess maybe a psychological aspect to being a registered party member,
right.
And many people do vote their party line if they're not familiar, and that's where voter outreach and voter education comes into play.
Yeah.
We had the disadvantage of having one party line going into the general election, where our opponent had three. And you think of advertising, he's got 3 slots on the supermarket shelf where we have only one.
Right.
And so you have to really be able to get the voters to come to that particular shelf right. and focus on that shelf.
Right.
Well, it makes a really good point. I to just summarize that the political process, the election process, is more than just electing or voting for the candidate of your choice. It's preparing
being informed,
to put the candidate of your choice in a position to be voted for.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and we do have to wrap it up. So, Tony,
this was
Fusco,
great. Thank you very much.
And campaign. Thanks
Frank,
so much for
thank
being
you.
with us. I think we learned a lot today. And thank you for watching Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog. And remember, when Bruce the Blog listens, people talk and vote. Thank you.